That night, Lily Hope might not have made it if it weren't for Nova, a retired canine warrior, a silent hero, and the most loyal friend a child could ever have. But before Nova could save Lily, he had to face the most brutal battle of his life, confronting an old enemy, one who carried a deep grudge from a battlefield long forgotten. Does Nova have the strength to protect his family one last time? And what made the gang leader gasp in fear? No way, this dog is. Join Dog Stories as we uncover this intense and emotional tale. But before we dive into this gripping story, we'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button for Dog Stories. Every subscription is a priceless gift to us, and we sincerely value your support. Thank you so much. And now, get ready for Nova's fight for survival. The sunset sky painted the endless fields of Colorado in a deep crimson hue. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of dry grass and the crisp chill of autumn. In the distance, a modest wooden house stood alone in the vast land, isolated, more than 10 miles from the nearest town. To most, this was peace. But to Nova, a German shepherd who once served in the military, peace didn't mean safety. Standing on the front porch, his pointed ears perked up, eyes locked on the shadows behind the barn. A stronger gust of wind swept through, carrying a scent Nova didn't recognize. He let out a low growl, his sharp gaze scanning the wide-open yard as he took slow, cautious steps forward. Inside the house, Scarlet Ray was washing dishes, occasionally glancing out the window to check on Lily Hope, her 10-year-old daughter, who was playing with Nova in the yard. Lily tossed a rubber ball, and Nova leaped into the air, catching it effortlessly. But this time, when he landed, he didn't run back to her like he always did. Instead, he stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the distant tree line, his breathing growing heavier. Scarlet frowned. Since retiring from the military, Nova had stopped reacting strongly to everyday things. But over the past few days, his behavior had changed, barking at night, patrolling around the house as if searching for something, and standing guard at the door every morning when Lily left for school. "Nova?" Lily called, her voice tinged with surprise. "What's wrong, buddy?" Nova didn't move, his eyes still locked onto some unseen point in the distance. Scarlet set the plate down, dried her hands, and stepped outside. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Lily shrugged. "Nova just keeps staring at the woods. He won't play anymore." Scarlet followed Nova's gaze but saw nothing, just rows of silent trees bathed in the fading twilight. Yet, a creeping sense of unease settled deep in her chest. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go inside. It's getting late." Lily was about to protest when Nova suddenly let out a low growl, a deep rumble from the back of his throat. The fur along his spine stood on end, his body tense like a coiled spring, ready to strike. Scarlet blinked. This wasn't normal. She gently took Lily's hand and pulled her toward the door. Inside. Now. Nova backed up with them, but his eyes never left the tree line, not until the door clicked shut behind them. The next morning, Lily rode her bike to school as usual. Nova stood on the front porch, watching her every step until she disappeared down the dirt road leading to town. But even after she was gone, Lily couldn't shake the strange feeling gnawing at her. Half a mile from home, Lily noticed a dark gray Dodge Durango parked at the bend in the road. Behind the wheel sat a man wearing sunglasses, his face expressionless, unreadable. Lily tried to ignore it, but a creeping sensation told her she was being watched. When she reached the school gate, she turned back. The gray Durango was still there. Its engine was off, but its presence lingered, like a predator lurking in the shadows. That evening, Scarlet was tidying up the living room when her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" No one answered right away. Only the sound of slow, steady breathing filled the silence on the other end of the line. Scarlet's heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" Still, no response. She was about to hang up when a deep, rasping voice finally spoke. "You have something we need. Don't make this harder than it has to be." She froze. Her throat went dry, fingers tightening around the phone. "Who are you?" Click. The line went dead. A wave of fear crawled through Scarlet's chest. She glanced around the house, searching for some sign that she was imagining things. But then her eyes met Nova's, standing dead center in the living room, his deep brown gaze locked onto her. He knew. Something was wrong. And Scarlet knew it. She set the phone down. The house felt unnaturally quiet, as if the very walls were holding their breath. From the corner of the living room, Nova stood motionless, ears pricked, eyes locked onto her, waiting. Outside, the night had settled in. A gust of wind rattled the bare branches outside the window. Scarlett stepped forward, pulling the curtains shut, forcing herself to believe she wasn't alone. She had Nova. And Nova wasn't just a dog. Before becoming a part of the Adam family, Nova had a past forged in fire and chaos. He had once been an elite canine operative, trained by the military to detect explosives and carry out high-risk rescue missions in war zones. But Nova wasn't just a soldier. He was the loyal companion of one man in particular, Gabriel Adam, Scarlett's husband and Lily's father. Their final mission took place in the treacherous mountains of Afghanistan. During an ambush, their unit was caught in a hail of gunfire. Nova was the only one who sensed the buried landmine, just seconds before Gabriel would have stepped on it. Nova's warning saved the entire team, giving them a chance to escape the trap, but at a devastating cost. Gabriel took a bullet while shielding his men. Nova, wounded but relentless, stayed by his side until the very end. Gabriel didn't make it. After that mission, Nova was retired from service. Most canine units are either placed back into training programs or adopted by new families, but Gabriel had already made arrangements. If anything ever happened to him, he wanted Nova to go home, to Scarlett and Lily, as one final protector for the family he loved. Nova still bore scars from the battlefield, some on his body, others buried deep in his mind. But when he met Lily, he found a new reason to keep fighting, and now he knew the battle wasn't over yet. For the past 3 days, Nova had been restless. He had lived through ambushes, surprise attacks, the feeling of being hunted, and that feeling was creeping back. There was a scent around the house that didn't belong, not the mailman, not a familiar visitor. It was gunpowder mixed with the sweat of dangerous men. That night, as Scarlett went upstairs to check on Lily, Nova didn't follow her like he always did. Instead, he walked to the front door, stood still for a long moment, listening. Then suddenly, he growled. Scarlett spun around, startled. "Nova?" Nova didn't turn his head. His eyes stayed fixed on the narrow gap of the window, his body tense like a wire about to snap. Scarlett froze. She heard nothing, saw nothing. But she trusted Nova. Her fingers instinctively tightened around her phone. Outside, darkness swallowed the ranch whole, and Scarlett knew she was running out of time. At dawn, just as Scarlett finally drifted into a few hours of restless sleep, her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She grabbed it, her heart pounding. This time, there was no silence. A deep, rasping voice spoke immediately. "Tonight, you lose everything if you don't cooperate." Scarlett held her breath. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice stretched tight like a wire. "That doesn't matter." A pause. "What matters is you have something we need, and we know how to make you cooperate." Scarlett felt the blood in her veins turn ice cold. Nova stepped forward, his nose pressing lightly against her hand. His eyes were no longer just watchful. He was waiting for a command. But there was something they didn't know. Scarlett wasn't alone. She had Nova, and this dog had once protected a soldier in the heat of war. Now he would protect the Adam family, at any cost. The Colorado sky stretched endlessly, the golden morning sun casting a false sense of peace over the Adam ranch. In the front yard, Lily Hope stood, her small sneakers pressing into the brittle autumn grass. She tossed a rubber ball high into the air, catching it deftly with her foot before squinting toward Nova, the German shepherd whose deep brown eyes gleamed with sharp focus. "Nova, ready?" Lily giggled, swinging her arm back before tossing the ball far across the yard. But Nova didn't move. He stood frozen, his body rigid as stone, ears perked, eyes locked on the distant trail leading into the woods. Lily blinked. Something felt off. Nova only reacted this way when there was danger. "Nova?" The dog didn't respond, and in the blink of an eye, he lunged forward, slamming into Lily, knocking her to the ground, and in that exact moment, crack! A deafening gunshot split the air. Dirt exploded from the very spot where Lily had been standing just seconds before. Scarlett's heart stopped. She stood frozen on the porch, eyes wide, staring at the torn-up dirt. Her heart screamed in denial. This couldn't be a coincidence. Nova stood protectively in front of Lily, the fur along his spine bristling, a deep growl rumbling from his throat. He didn't need to look to know that bullet wasn't a stray shot. His military instincts had already locked onto one undeniable truth. The target was Lily Hope. Half a mile away, perched on a low ridge, a man lowered his rifle scope, scowling through the reflective glass. "Damn it," he muttered, "that dog's faster than I thought." Beside him, another man, bald, thick beard, clad in a black leather jacket, lowered his binoculars, eyes narrowing. "Lily Hope is the target. There's no kill order on her." "Relax," the sniper smirked. "It was just a warning shot. But that dog, that's a problem." The bearded man remained silent for a moment, deep in thought. "Call it in. Tell them the target's been alerted. We need to move faster." The sniper chuckled, a cruel glint in his eye. "And if her mother doesn't cooperate, you think we should switch up the plan?" The bearded man didn't respond, but his gaze darkened. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. Back at the house, Scarlett pulled Lily inside, slamming the door shut. Lily was still shaking, her small hands clenched into fists. Scarlett gripped her daughter's shoulders, her own voice unsteady. "Are you okay?" Lily shook her head, fear still clouding her wide eyes. "Nova saved me." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He pushed me before the bullet hit." Scarlett looked down at Nova. He stood there, muscles taut, eyes fixed on the window, his chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. He knew. This wasn't over. Scarlett's phone buzzed, an unknown number. She didn't want to answer, but she knew she had to. Her finger hovered for a second before tapping accept. A voice came through, cold and unyielding. "I told you, you didn't listen. Now you see what happens." Scarlett's grip on the phone tightened. "What do you want? You already know." Scarlett's stomach tightened. They knew. They knew she had seen something. She hadn't meant to. She wasn't snooping. But a month ago, while reviewing financial records as part of her accounting job, she had stumbled across something she was never supposed to see. Millions of dollars moving between anonymous accounts. And then, an anonymous email had arrived. "Forget what you saw, or you'll pay the price." She hadn't told anyone, but that didn't mean they didn't know. A chill ran down Scarlett's spine. She tightened her grip on the phone. "And if I refuse?" The voice on the other end laughed. "Then we'll take what's most precious to you." Scarlett's eyes flicked to Lily. Her chest tightened. No one would lay a hand on her daughter. She forced her voice to stay calm. "What do you want?" "It's simple," the deep voice replied. "Tomorrow, go to the location we send you, unlock the security system. Do that, and you and your daughter walk away unharmed." Scarlett let out a cold, sharp laugh. "There's no way in hell you're keeping your word." Click. The line went dead. But Scarlett knew one thing for certain. Lily was no longer safe. Nova wasn't just a dog. He had seen ambushes before. He had smelled death before it arrived. And he knew they weren't done. That night, Nova didn't sleep. Nova patrolled the house, alert to even the slightest movement in the darkness. A gentle breeze drifted through the distant woods. But Nova wasn't fooled. He could smell them. The scent of hunters. The battle had begun. Click. A faint sound echoed. A hand gripped the back door handle. A shadow slipped through the window, breath heavy in the darkness. Outside, a dark gray Dodge Durango rolled slowly toward the house. Its headlights went dark. Scarlett felt it. Something was wrong. She rushed to Lily's room. Empty. The window was open. And then, a deep, menacing growl thundered from the yard. Nova's growl. Scarlett bolted for the door. Lily was gone. All that remained was a dark figure slipping into the woods, carrying her. The window in Lily's room was wide open, the curtains still swaying in the wind. Outside, footprints littered the damp ground, leading straight into the trees. Scarlett ran to the porch, eyes scanning frantically, but all she saw was the dark gray Dodge Durango rolling away at a slow, deliberate pace. They had taken Lily. Scarlett's chest tightened, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. She had lost her daughter. But then, a low, primal snarl rumbled from the shadows. Nova had found them. Nova was never a step behind. Before Scarlett could react, Nova exploded forward like a storm. He launched into a full sprint, powerful legs cutting through the wind, locked onto the fleeing vehicle. But just as he tore across the yard, "Stop!" The command came like a whip from behind. Scarlett whipped around. Two men were already inside the house. They weren't in a hurry. No panic, no hesitation. They already had Lily. Now they were here to neutralize Scarlett. One man was tall and broad, a deep scar slashing across his cheek. A sleek Glock rested in his steady grip. The other was shorter but stocky, blocking the only exit. "Ms. Ray?" The scarred man spoke, his voice calm but laced with quiet menace. "No need to get so tense. We haven't touched the girl, yet." Scarlett's breath felt heavy in her chest. "What do you want?" The shorter man let out a low chuckle. "Come on. You already know." Nova was gone. Scarlett's eyes flicked around the room. No sign of him, no sound, but she knew he was there, waiting, watching, biding his time. The scarred man took a step forward, gun unwavering. "Get in the car, Scarlett," the scarred man said, his voice low and gravelly. "Go to the location. Unlock the system. The girl comes back safe." Scarlett glared at him, her body wound tight like a coiled spring. The shorter man smirked, pulling out a small knife. "Of course," he mused. "We could always send you a little reminder. A finger, maybe." Rage flared in Scarlett's chest. But before she could move, a shadow exploded from behind. Nova attacked. He struck like a hurricane, launching himself at the shorter man with terrifying speed. His jaws clamped onto the man's wrist, twisting it back with brutal force. "Arr!" the man screamed, his knife clattering to the floor as his hand contorted in pain. The scarred man stumbled back, gun raising. But Scarlett was faster. She snatched the knife from the floor and drove it straight into his upper arm. The man screamed, his grip loosening. The gun slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a sharp, metallic clatter. Scarlett kicked him hard in the gut, sending him sprawling onto the ground. Nova released the shorter man, spinning toward the scarred one, teeth bared, growling. Both attackers were down. Scarlett panted, her chest rising and falling as she turned toward the window. The car was pulling away, but Nova had locked onto his target, and he wasn't letting them escape. The chase on the dirt road, Nova bolted through the door, tearing after the fleeing vehicle. The Dodge Durango accelerated, tires kicking up a thick cloud of dust into the night air. But behind it, in the darkness, a shadow ran like a beast unleashed. Nova's focus never wavered. There was only one target. Lily was in that car. Inside the vehicle, one of the men glanced in the rearview mirror. His eyes widened in terror. "The dog, it's chasing us!" The driver gritted his teeth. "Then lose it." He yanked the wheel hard. The SUV skidded violently across the rough dirt road, kicking up a thick cloud of dust. But Nova didn't stop. Every stride was relentless, powerful, closing the gap with every passing second. Inside the vehicle, Lily struggled, her mouth gagged, but through the window she saw Nova. Her eyes lit up with hope. Nova never left his own behind. He leaped. Thud! Nova's claws latched onto the rear bumper of the Dodge Durango. The wind howled past his ears, the vehicle shuddering as he dug in, using every ounce of his strength to keep from being thrown off. The man in the passenger seat yanked out a gun, twisting around, but Nova was already on the roof. The dark gray Dodge Durango tore down the rugged dirt road, disappearing into the night, leaving behind the shadowed outline of the Adam Ranch. Inside, Lily Hope was bound tight, her eyes wide with fear, but she didn't scream. Because she saw him. Nova was still there, clinging, fighting, refusing to let go. Below, a second truck pulled up alongside them. Another vehicle, another layer of the trap. They thought they had both Lily and Nova, but what these men didn't realize, what they never could have expected, was that Nova wasn't just a dog. Nova lay motionless in the back of the truck, the thick chain cinched tightly around his neck. Across from him sat a heavily built man with a scarred face, his grip firm on a gun, watching Nova closely. He didn't trust the dog, and rightfully so. But Nova showed no fear. He didn't struggle. He didn't bark. He simply stared, cold, unblinking, patient, a hunter in wait. The truck jolted sharply as it hit a curve in the road. This was the moment Nova had been waiting for. In a split second, he jerked his head forward, loosening the chain just slightly. The man didn't notice. Nova stayed perfectly still. His body relaxed, but his teeth worked quietly, methodically, grinding against the metal of the lock. On the outside, he looked subdued, but on the inside, he was already preparing to strike. The convoy turned onto a narrow forest road where the light grew weaker, the shadows longer. From here, they were heading to a place where no one would find Lily, where only the strong would make it out alive. Nova felt the truck slow down, now or never. With one powerful jerk, Nova ripped free from the chain in an instant. Before the scarred man could process what was happening, Nova was airborne. He lunged straight at him, his razor-sharp jaws clamping down on the man's gun arm. biting down with bone-crushing force. Quack, quack. The man screamed as his gun clattered to the floor of the truck. But Nova wasn't done. He slammed his weight forward, knocking the man backward before leaping onto the truck's edge, then launching himself into the night. He hit the ground running. His powerful legs absorbed the impact, carrying him forward without losing momentum. He was free. The truck rumbled forward toward the base, its passengers oblivious. They had no idea a warrior had just vanished into the darkness. A warrior's instinct, Nova wasted no time. He had Lily's scent, and he wouldn't stop until he found her. He cut through the dense trees, his nose working fast. The night wind carried the telltale signs: motor oil, sweat, dust. None of it belonged in this forest. He was closing in. That scent, the scent of the men who had taken Lily. Nova pushed forward, weaving between tree trunks, his senses sharp, locked onto the trail. But then, a flash. A memory surged through his mind. The battlefield. Dust swirled through an abandoned village, gunfire ripping through the air, panicked screams echoing under the burning Middle Eastern sun. Nova was there, and right in front of him, Gabriel Adam, Lily's father. Gabriel was wounded, blood soaking his uniform from a gaping wound in his shoulder. But his hands still gripped his M4 rifle, his breath ragged but steady. "Nova," he gasped, his voice weak but unyielding. "Find a way out. I'll hold them off." But Nova never abandoned his own. With a snarl, he spun back around and charged headfirst into the chaos to protect the man who had once saved him. Back to the present. A cold wind whispered through the treetops, but the fire inside Nova burned hotter than ever. He hadn't been able to save Gabriel that day. But this time, he wouldn't lose Lily. Nova pushed harder, his powerful legs propelling him toward the base where she was being held. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The old warehouse loomed in the darkness, its rusted walls hiding the men who had taken Lily. The guards stood at their posts, unaware that their worst nightmare was already here. Watching, calculating, waiting. The howl that brings fear. Nova lifted his head, inhaling deeply, then howled. The sound ripped through the night, echoing through the trees. It wasn't the howl of one dog. It was a call that mimicked an entire pack of hungry wolves. Inside the warehouse, the guards jerked upright. "What the hell was that?" one of them muttered, gripping his gun tighter. The other shook his head, but sweat had already started to bead on his forehead. "There aren't wolves in this area, are there?" Fear spreads faster than fire, and Nova had just planted the first seed. Tactical strike. The warehouse door creaked open. One of the guards stepped out, gun raised, eyes scanning the darkness. His mistake. From the side of the warehouse, Nova struck like lightning. His jaws clamped down on the man's wrist, twisting it backward, forcing him to drop his gun. "Arr!" The guard screamed, blood dripping from the deep bite wound. The second guard whipped his gun up. But Nova was faster. He lunged low, sinking his teeth into the man's knee. The guard stumbled back, crashing into a wooden shelf, his head slamming against the concrete floor. 2 guards, down. 10 seconds. Scarlet slipped inside the warehouse. Nova had cleared the way. Now it was time to find Lily. Lily was tied to a chair, her wide eyes filled with terror but also hope when she saw her mother. "Lily!" Scarlet rushed forward, her hands working fast to cut the ropes binding her daughter. As soon as she was free, Lily threw her arms around her mother, sobbing. But this wasn't over. There was no time to stop. Nova stood guard at the doorway, his body tense, ears sharp. They weren't done yet. The boss hadn't shown himself. From the hallway behind them, the pounding of footsteps echoed. Scarlet whipped around, her chest tightening as she caught a glimpse of a shadow slipping through the back exit. The leader. He wasn't going to fight. He was running. Nova let out a deep, guttural snarl and lunged forward. But Scarlet's hand shot out, stopping him. Not yet. Scarlet wouldn't let Nova risk himself alone. The man wouldn't get far. She turned back to Lily, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I'm here. It's almost over." Outside, the wail of siren tore through the night, red and blue lights flashing against the warehouse walls, but the fight wasn't finished. Nova's eyes never left the back door, where the leader had just vanished. He knew. The man wasn't running out of fear. He was planning his next move. Scarlet turned to Lily, her voice urgent but steady. "I'm getting you outside. The police will protect you. But Nova and I have to finish this." Lily shook her head violently, gripping Nova's fur tight. "No, don't leave me." Scarlet grasped her daughter's shoulders, her gaze firm. "Trust me, we've come this far, and I won't let anyone hurt you again." Nova let out a low growl, then nudged his head into Lily's chest. A silent promise. Scarlet took one last look at her daughter, then turned. She and Nova charged out the back door. The hunt begins. The forest behind the warehouse was swallowed in darkness, thick branches devouring every sliver of light. But Nova didn't need his eyes to see. He could smell him. Gunpowder, cold sweat, the scent of a man running for his life. The leader had taken off first, but no human could outrun a war-trained wolf. Nova tracked him, his paws silent against the forest floor. Scarlet followed close behind. Then, a gunshot ripped through the air. Bang! Scarlet and Nova jerked sideways, diving behind a tree. A voice drifted through the shadows. "You really think you can take me down that easily, dog?" He was waiting for them. Nova didn't growl, didn't bark. He just stood there, silent, watching, calculating. His instincts knew this was life or death. Then, from the darkness, the leader stepped forward, gun in hand. Nova moved first. Bang! A bullet grazed his ear, but he never slowed. Thud! Nova slammed into him, sending them both crashing into the dirt. The man snarled, rolling over, fist swinging, his knuckles smashed into Nova's head. Thud! Nova was knocked back but didn't fall. He recovered instantly, his stance unwavering. The leader gritted his teeth, pulling a knife from his belt, the blade glinting under the moonlight. He lunged, but Nova was faster. He dodged the strike, then sprang forward, jaws locking around the man's knife arm. Crack! Ah! The leader screamed, the knife clattering to the ground, but he wasn't done yet. With his free hand, he yanked a concealed handgun from his side. Bang! A critical shot. Nova staggered. Scarlet's heart stopped. A dark stain spread across Nova's side, blood seeping into his fur. "No!" Scarlet screamed, gripping her gun tighter, but Nova didn't fall. Even wounded, he kept moving forward. Because Nova never gave up. The leader stared in shock, watching the dog still standing, still advancing. "How the hell are you still on your feet?" Nova didn't care. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for his family, for Lily. And he had seen her father fall on the battlefield. He wouldn't let Lily lose anyone else. The leader pulled the trigger again. But he was too late. Nova was already there. He leaped. His razor-sharp teeth sank deep into the man's shoulder, dragging him down to the ground. "Ark!" The man screamed in agony, and then, bang! Scarlet ended it. Scarlet's bullet tore through his chest. The leader froze, his breath caught in his throat. He stared at Nova. He stared at Scarlet. Then he collapsed onto the cold, unforgiving ground. Nova panted heavily, his dark fur soaked with blood from the gunshot wound. Scarlet dropped the gun and ran to him. "Nova! No! Please, don't leave us!" Nova's legs gave out, his body slumping to the ground. "Lily begs Nova not to die." Lily rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. She threw her arms around Nova, her small frame trembling. "You did it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But you can't leave me. You promised." Nova closed his eyes. The world fell silent. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the chill of the night. In the distance, police swarmed the area, radios crackling with chatter. But Lily didn't care. She only held Nova tighter, praying he was still breathing. Because if she lost Nova, she lost everything. The wail of an ambulance siren cut through the night. Nova lay motionless on the cold ground, his breaths growing weaker. Lily held onto him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Please, don't leave me." Her voice was broken, choked with fear. Scarlet placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, but she, too, couldn't hide the terror in her eyes. A paramedic knelt beside them, swiftly checking Nova's heartbeat. A flashlight swept over his dark fur, now matted with blood. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then, the paramedic gave a small nod. "He's still alive." Lily gasped sharply, her small fingers clutching Nova's fur even tighter. He never abandoned her, and now she wouldn't abandon him. The road to recovery. Nova survived, but his injuries were severe. He spent weeks in the animal hospital, his body weakened but his spirit unbroken. And through it all, Lily never left his side. Every day after school, she rushed to the vet clinic, sat beside his bed, and talked to him, as if nothing had changed. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Lily whispered, her small fingers gently stroking his fur, now shaved in patches to bandage his wounds. Nova's tail twitched slightly, but his eyes, his warrior's eyes, still held their familiar strength. "You saved my dad in the war. You saved my mom and me that night." Lily's voice softened, full of emotion. "You're a real hero, Nova." Nova slowly closed his eyes, listening to the soft, comforting voice of the little girl beside him. He knew his mission wasn't over, but this time, he would allow himself to rest. 3 months later, Lily stood in front of her class, a bright smile on her face. Beside her, Nova sat proudly, his fur almost fully healed, though the scars remained, battle marks of everything he had endured. Today, Lily was giving a presentation about military canines. She took a deep breath, looking around at her classmates. We all know about canine dogs in the military, but not everyone understands what they sacrifice. Every pair of eyes locked onto her as she pointed down at Nova. "This is Nova. He was once a soldier, fighting alongside my dad, protecting troops on the battlefield." She knelt down, gently running her hand over Nova's head. "But even after retirement, he never stopped protecting. He saved my mom. He saved me, and he's still here." Nova lifted his head, his warm brown eyes gazing at Lily with quiet devotion. A wave of applause erupted through the classroom, but Lily didn't need the applause. She only needed to know that Nova was still by her side. Not all heroes wear armor or carry weapons. Some never speak a word, but they protect with everything they have, just like Nova did. He had once been a soldier on the battlefield, standing alongside warriors in the heat of war. But his greatest mission wasn't in the military. It was protecting the family he loved. Have you ever known a dog as loyal as this? Maybe you too have met a dog that never abandoned its owner, one that stayed by their side through the hardest moments. If you have a story like that, share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And if you love heartwarming stories about dogs, about bravery, loyalty, and the moments that stay with us forever, don't forget to subscribe to Dog Stories. There are so many incredible stories waiting for you. Let's spread the love for our four-legged heroes together.